is the Leon Charney Report. And now, here is your host, Leon Charney.
Good evening. This is Leon Charney for the Leon Charney Report, and I'm talking to you live from Tel Aviv, Israel. It's midweek in this country, as it is in your country, and to tell you a little bit what's happening here is very tough at this moment. There is a split in the country. It's about 50-50. If you walk in Tel Aviv and speak to people who belong to sort of the secular part of Israel, you will find that most people are looking for a way to bring down the government of Bibi Netanyahu. On the other hand, if you walk in Jerusalem and you walk the streets where many religious Jews live, you'll find out that these people are fervent supporters of Bibi Netanyahu. And one can say that it's really a 50-50 split. Now, what happens in cases like this? The possibilities are that there will be a showdown on the conversion bill. The conversion bill is a bill that says that Reform and conservative Jews would not be respected in Israel in terms of performances of religious services such as conversions, etc. Everything would have to be done by the Orthodox rabbinate. This has raised ire and anger in the United States amongst Reform and conservative Jews, and there is a lot of pressure being put on the Right Way party, which is led by a fellow named Kahalani, who says that he would walk out of the government, and there is a lot of pressure being put on Sharansky, which is the Russian party, and people are asking him to leave the government. At the same time, Ehud Barak, who is the leader of the Labor Party, is non-committal on it, and there's an uproar within the Labor Party as to how he would vote. It was reported this week that Ehud Barak met with the members of the Shas Party, which is a religious party that is spearheading this effort to get the religious bill on the agenda and passed. And Barak gave a non-committal answer as to how he would vote. This upsets the left wing of the Labor Party. So if you're getting a little confused, I don't blame you, because a lot of people in this country at this moment are very confused. People are anxious to see the peace process go forward. Arafat and Defense Minister Yitzhak Mordechai met the other day. It looked like some progress was on the front burner, but you never know in this country until it really is signed, sealed, and delivered. What may happen is that a deal may be worked out to open up an airport in the Gaza Strip. My feeling is that what we're going to do is do some interviews here at full length, and we will report to you back for about 2-3 hours upon my return next week, and it will give you a feeling of exactly what's happening in the country. A real split is going on. I hope that you enjoy the interview with the Kennedy book, and we hope to see you next week.
We have Burton Hersh with us, who's a great writer. He's written a book called The Shadow Presidency, and it's called Ted Kennedy in Opposition. It's a story about Ted Kennedy and one of the most illustrious families in American history. Illustrious, we'll talk about. Famous, let's call them. They're nearly imperial, weren't they, in a way, Bert?
Well, there was a while there when the Kennedys were what we had for nobility, I guess.
You went to school with Ted Kennedy.
I did, yeah. I knew him a little bit in college and much better afterwards.
Were you afraid he's going to be a neurosurgeon because of his, was he brainy in Harvard?
Ted was a smart kid in college. I mean, the idea that he wasn't is a silly notion. I mean, he was a hard-working guy. He had to work, I think, to get decent grades, but he got them. Had a little fluke his first year, and somebody took his Spanish exam for him, and that kind of undermined his freshman year.
Is that what they call a fluke?
Yeah, the college threw him out for a while, but he came back and did well.
All right, this is your second book on Kennedy, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's a habit I've seen him fallen into.
What is this fascination with Teddy Kennedy?
Well, my first book came out in 1972, and bit by bit it kind of established itself as the standard work on Kennedy, and people kept after me, editors and publishers, said, why don't you do something else on Kennedy? And I fought it off for about 25 years, but by then there was a huge dossier of important things that Kennedy had been doing.
Did he cooperate?
That's a tricky word. You know, that usually means that the subject wants to see the manuscript first. In that sense, this book isn't like that. I mean, he made himself available, he made his staff available, they gave me whatever I had any use for, and I wrote what I thought. Now, and as at the moment, as usual, I think they're a little annoyed with what's in that book. They feel some of it is just too close to the bone. Mm-hmm. And nevertheless, I think we've kind of covered the waterfront.
All right, let everybody ask about the same thing. You've done 1,000 interviews. Has anybody not done an interview and asked you about Chappaquiddick?
Well, I did the sort of the central takeout on Chappaquiddick in my first book, and I don't think my opinions have changed much. I mean, there's just the rumor mill's been pounding away ever since those days, but I think I pretty well covered it. My feeling is basically that Chappaquiddick was an auto accident. Kennedy went off the bridge. He hit his head. He developed, I saw the x-rays myself, and I can assure you, he developed a huge hematoma. He was in shock, and his cousin Joe Gargan and Gargan's friend Mark were just at sea. Nobody knew what to do. And so the story played itself out and turned into the tragedy that not only killed Mary Jo Kopechne, but probably finished Ted Kennedy in presidential politics.
No question. I can tell you that for a fact.
Yep.
The perception of the public is what on the Chappaquiddick affair? That he killed the girl? No.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of stupid theories and a few reasonably well-hatched ones that have come along, but I think substantially what they said happened, if only because it was such a damaging version of events. It's hard to imagine them cooking up anything worse in terms of Kennedy's situation in his future. I think the public felt that an effort was made to cover up, to smother the situation in lawyers. And I think that hurt Kennedy, and I think it still does in some ways. The feeling
was that there was a cover-up, as there is today now. With the Kennedys are in crisis all the time.
Well, there are lots of them.
There are lots of them, and they make a lot of... well, you had Smith down for rape, was it, in Florida?
Right, yeah.
And you have Joe Kennedy, I think he's got a problem with his wife. And you have Patrick Kennedy, which is Ted Kennedy's son, I think. He has a problem in Rhode Island. I mean, I'm lost with all these Kennedys.
I think Patrick's doing all right. I mean, he's...
Not Patrick, excuse me. I'm sorry. The brother of Joe.
Yeah, you're thinking about Michael Kennedy.
Michael Kennedy, I'm sorry. He's married to...
he's married to
Gifford's
daughter, yeah, Victoria Gifford.
Right.
Who seems to have concocted some kind of affair with his babysitter. And the speculation is that she was 14 when all this began. They're fighting this one out in the tabloids as we speak. But that, they're I think part of the problem is that the messages come through to some of the Kennedys of several generations that they can do what they want and then to hell with it.
They're imperial.
Yeah, and that I think they're being brought up to date on how far that can be pushed and what the costs are going to be.
Did you ever meet John Kennedy?
The president?
Yeah.
No, I never did.
How about Joe Kennedy?
I ran into Joe one time, but it was after he had a stroke, so there wasn't much conversation.
No, that's true. Was he a bootlegger?
The historians tend to agree that there was something going on. Certainly the day that the amendment was reversed and liquor became legal, he and Jimmy Roosevelt were over in Scotland lining up syndication for all the big...
I like your dry humor.
Well, I mean, he had some kind of a running start, you got to assume.
Yeah, and it wasn't hair tonic.
No. My guess is, though, that if you looked into it, if one could look into it as closely as it should be looked into, he made most of his money in Wall Street pools and various dodges, and then multiplied that in California in the movie business when he put together RKO. I mean, the major money, I'm not talking about the seed money, the first few $100,000, but I think the major money was made in bigger arenas than bootlegging.
Would it be a correct statement of fact to say that many of the Kennedys, including the father, were great womanizers?
Well, I think let me put it this way. I think in the Kennedy family, sex was regarded as recreation and not commitment.
That's
and I don't think that's changed much.
Did you ever hear that from Ted Kennedy's mouth?
That's not a direct quote. I think we have to extrapolate.
All right, let's talk a little bit about what you say about Ted Kennedy in your book. We agree that Chappaquiddick probably prevented him from becoming president of the United States. I remember the time when he tried to challenge, or he did challenge, President Carter in the Democratic primary in 1980. And he lost by and there was a lot of anger between them, a lot of bitterness. And I was there at the convention, and barely Kennedy wouldn't even shake his hand on a stage. I mean, it was terrible. It was ugly, and the Democrats couldn't pull together. They lost the election. Now you can say it was the hostages. You can say what you want, but it was a very, very egregious and tough battle between these two guys.
Well, Kennedy ran a very inept campaign, I think, too.
I read that in your book. I read your full book, and it was pretty well disorganized. And no one seemed to really have a...
The campaign, not my book.
No, not your book. The campaign was terribly... That's what you say. And anyway, it was disorganized. Smith, Steve Smith, was involved. He always wanted to take over control of the campaigns. Yeah, and Kennedy would make phone calls behind his back and reverse decisions, and things were chaotic. I remember quite well because I knew a lot of the people in the campaign, and at one point they needed some ideas for some speeches and so forth, and I tried to help out. So I had a bit of a hand in that. I remember very well how things went. Do you like Ted Kennedy?
Yeah, I mean, you have to like Kennedy. I mean, he's a warm, gracious, considerate human being. He, they say in the Senate, if you want to find Ted Kennedy, listen for the laughter. And he'll have a claque of people around him, Democrats, Republicans, conservatives, liberals, and he'll have put a point on the issue, made a joke, and they'll all be laughing, and he'll have relaxed the issue, and pretty soon some legislation will come through that'll have his fingerprints all over it. A lot of this book is about that. It's not all scandals, it's not all Palm Beach.
What was the low point in his career?
You know, I think in many ways there were two low points that in my view. People always think of Chappaquiddick, but I would say that in 1964, when he flew into Springfield and his plane crashed, and he was in a stricker frame.
He injured his back?
He injured his back. The worst thing for him about that, I think, was that his administrative assistant, who was a close friend, Ed Moss, got killed. Kennedy had insisted that they fly in through heavy weather, even though the pilot didn't want to do it. And the pilot made a mistake in landing. They crashed into an apple orchard, and the pilot and Moss were killed. And I think Kennedy's that's never quite lifted from him, because he talks about it to this day. And I think the other cutting point, and I deal with this, and I think very fully in my book, is the Palm Beach incident, where he sort of led his son and Willie Smith to a bar. They'd actually done the same thing a couple of days earlier, although that never got into the press. And a couple of women got picked up in the process, and the whole thing kind of ran away from everybody. And I think both the Chappaquiddick situation and that are very typical, and they're part of a pattern in Kennedy's life that follows when, in the case of Chappaquiddick, he'd been grieving for a year for Bobby, and he'd been drinking heavily, and the pain and the anxiety was very great. And when the time came, the handle came off in a way. Mm-hmm. And I think exactly the same thing happened in Palm Beach. Steve Smith, the brother-in-law, who was really like a brother to the Kennedys, had died of cancer painfully and over a long period. And this get-together in Palm Beach was to be a kind of a reminiscence of what Steve had been all about. And it just got to be too painful, and that's when Ted brooded for a while, and then he grabbed his son and his nephew, and they went out and had a couple of drinks, and things got away from them. And I think in both cases, in the three cases, the plane crash, the Chappaquiddick situation, and again in Palm Beach, Kennedy felt that his native boisterousness and impulse to sort of laugh off tragedy had landed him and other people in deep trouble. So those were really the low points, I think, of his career.
Is he and was he a really heavy drinker?
I'm not with him all the time. It's hard to tell. I've seen him drinking.
What does the staff say?
The staff doesn't talk about that very much, obviously. So the ex-staff people do sometimes.
I'm talking about, I'm sure you've interviewed everybody.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of people. Two things you got to realize. Kennedy is in constant pain because of his back. He broke every vertebra in his back. So by about 5 o'clock, standing on the Senate floor, moving around, standing in reception lines, he's in pain. And he needs that first vodka. He needs that first, whiskey and ginger, whatever people will hand to him. And sometimes as the strain of the day builds, he's usually up around 4:30 or 5 o'clock. By 8 or 9 o'clock, when he's still enmeshed in politics, things get pretty stressful. And he can sometimes keep drinking in order to kind of keep everything in balance. I think there's much less of that since his remarriage.
He has a happy marriage now,
Very
doesn't
happy
he?
marriage, yeah. He's very, I think he and Victoria are a great couple.
Have
and
you met her, too?
Oh, yeah, sure, I know her quite well.
And she's a lawyer, is that it?
She's a lawyer, she's a crack lawyer. She's one of the best real estate lawyers in the D.C. area. Was long before she met Ted.
And she's happy in Washington? Her father was a politician?
He was a politician, yeah. He kind of ran the Louisiana area for the Kennedys. Judge Reggie, and he has had his troubles. He almost landed in jail at one point for some shenanigans involving a savings and loan that he was involved with. But he was able to, I think he was put under house arrest for a while. He took a NOLO, and so he's been in and out of the clinches.
Did you ever talk to Ted Kennedy about his relationships with his brother Jack and his brother Bobby?
Well, for years, you start talking to him about any subject at all, and pretty soon the conversation would drift back to the brothers.
Right.
They really overshadowed him. We don't have a copy of the book here, but if we had a copy, you'd see a kind of anguished Ted Kennedy humped over a podium, and behind him a statue of his brother Jack. That's the book you want to look for, The Shadow President, with that cover. Because that cover tells an awful lot. It's a great editorial cover. It tells you that Kennedy lived for many, many years in the shadow of his brother. And I think that went on until really comparatively recently. And little by little, I think his remarriage helped. He really has come into his own. And with that, some of the compulsive behavior has dropped away. It's a sort of death and redemption book in some ways.
Did he admire his brothers, or was he taught to admire them by the family? Because they patriarchs and matriarchs, they were very strong. I mean, Mrs. Kennedy was very powerful, and so was Joe Kennedy, obviously.
Well, that's the picture of the family. It was a tight family with strong parents directing the children, but I think what it really was a kind of a disorganized, dysfunctional family, with one or both of the parents gone almost all the time. The servants raising the kids not terribly well relating to each other. Bobby, a kind of a loner who really didn't have much connection with anybody. Ted coming along, having gone to a dozen schools before he got to college, bounced in and out of these schools, doing all right, but for one reason or another, they kept shifting schools. He told me, for example, when Jack was recovering from his back accident in the 1950s, he was recovering in Palm Beach, in the place in Palm Beach. And he asked Ted, Ted was kind of the family clown, and he always amused Jack. And he said, can Ted come down on the weekends? The father almost didn't permit it. Their rule was, you worked hard, you didn't use the vacation homes except on vacations. That kind of thing. Things were at once strict and finally rather disorganized in that family. Everybody kind of had to invent himself. Jack Kennedy would talk to friends about this, about the difficulties he had with both his parents. But Ted, for many, many years, kind of idolized the parents. You never heard this from him. And then recently, when I was talking to him, in December, I think it was, I asked him how he got so interested in health care. He said what to me was a very interesting thing. He said, I first got interested because Rosemary, the retarded sister, needed so much help. She, to me, was the warmest, most welcoming, friendliest, easiest to be with of all my siblings. Well, you can imagine how he felt when he was 9 years old and she was suddenly popped out of the family like a bad tooth to disappear for 20 years.
Yeah,
he must have thought, I think I deal with this in my book, am I going to be next? If I don't do and think what these people want, am I going to be the next Kennedy to disappear? You've got to understand that this fellow has come from a profoundly upsetting background.
I think you hit it. That they were really a dysfunctional family when you look at it, and this country is mesmerized by them. We got to cut Bert for a commercial. We'll come right back. Sure. We'll continue with Bert Hersh, who's a terrific writer. He's written some other books about the Swiss bank accounts, and we'd like to talk to him a little bit about it. But let's talk about the Kennedys at this moment, because they're a fascinating topic. No matter, you can like them or dislike them. They have had an impact on American history. We'll be right back. We're back. We're talking with Bert Hersh, who has written The Shadow President it's all about Ted Kennedy in opposition. And he is the biographer, really, of Ted Kennedy, because he's written this second book about him, so he knows from where to speak or from whence he speak. And he was also a college mate of him at Harvard before he took the Spanish exam, or after, I don't know, it was somewhere along the way, right?
Yeah.
Was, in your opinion, Joe Kennedy an anti-Semite?
Well, I think Joe Kennedy shared the knee-jerk anti-Semitism of his generation. He had a lot of his best friends. Joe Kennedy didn't have a lot of good friends. I mean, he had a way of cutting him off at the knees after a while when it served his purposes, and that was the problem. He certainly was an anti-Semite in the sense that he was terrified of Hitler and played to the Lindbergh faction in this country. But many of his good friends, like Arthur Kroc and many other people, wealthy Jews in California and other places, were good friends of Joe's. They were, when Ted went out and put together a book of reminiscences of people closest to his father, I would say half of them were Jewish people.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Perception is that he was basically an anti-Semite, and that could be because when he was ambassador in England, he had, in a sense, a pro-Nazi policy. Is that correct or incorrect?
I mean, in my view, Joe Kennedy was something of a coward. He was terrified of losing his children and himself getting bombed in the Blitz
and
while he was ambassador.
Too.
Yeah, losing his fortune, all those things. He traveled on a sea of apprehensions about these things, and it wasn't to him. The world wasn't worth destroying over the future of a few Jews. That was the sort of anti-Semitism he had. I don't think he was anti-Semitic one-to-one in his personal relationships, particularly. Certainly the boys are not that way. I mean, certainly I knew Bobby quite well, too.
No, they weren't anti-Semitic.
And there's none of that going on.
Basically, been pro-Israel and very, most of their staff, a lot of their staff is Jewish.
Yeah, always.
I remember Bobby's attorney general, not attorney, his counsel, a friend, Adam Olinsky.
Adam was, and Peter Edelman.
Peter Edelman. I mean,
Yeah.
He was surrounded by a bunch of Jewish people.
Yeah.
I don't know about Ted Kennedy's staff.
Always.
Always
Yeah,
Jews?
Always a lot of Jews.
So he's had a good staff, hasn't he?
He has Jews and non-Jews. He's always
No, but he had a strong
drawn
staff.
to himself, people who knew their own mind, worked hard, believed in the issues that he did, educated him as he educated them. He's been a marvelous leader of a Senate staff, probably the best in this century. And it's produced perhaps the best performance of any senator in this century. Another thing you really have to say about Kennedy, this was true of Bobby too, whom I also knew, is on the personal level, they're really very kind people, very considerate people. I found that over
You think Hoffa would say that about Bobby?
Well, I mean, if you were Hoffa, perhaps you might have a footnote or two. But if you knew them as people, I remember when Joe Biden got sick, Kennedy used to take the train every week up to Biden's place and sit by him. He had some kind of a brain clot and had it removed. And Biden was then head of the Judiciary Committee. Kennedy would talk to him about the issues of the day, would read to him about, because he couldn't read himself, really kind of mothered him for quite a period. And that's not untypical of Ted.
Not many people know this about them.
Yeah, I would say Bobby was that way too, just from my own experience with him, yeah.
Bobby has this perception of being a real tough character.
Well, there was another side, and he was. I'm sure those children of his miss him, because he was a very, like Joe Kennedy in many ways, the father, much warmer and more immediate, more arms around than the mother. And the girls, I think, tend to be tougher, and the boys tend to be more compassionate and emotional in that family.
This may be a very tough question. You may not have the answer. Does Ted Kennedy believe that the assassination of his brother is as we know it today, or does he think there's something else going on?
I think this was true of Bobby too. I think that's a subject you can't bring up with Kennedy, because I think he's blocked it off.
He doesn't want to.
He doesn't want to know. Doesn't want to investigate. Doesn't want to bring down whatever would fall on all of them if he did.
You write in your book that he was in a parade in Boston, and he's always fearful of being assassinated himself.
He was at that time. I think there's much less of this now.
Am I right? There was a blast that went off or something that he ducked.
Yeah, some idiot threw a cherry bomb into the crowd, and Kennedy just dropped onto his stomach. I remember I was right there. I think he thought he'd been shot. His face went white, and he was in almost hysterical paralysis for a few minutes.
Bert, why the fascination with the Kennedys? Do you know? Well, I mean, they're trendsetters in a way. If you put a Kennedy on the cover of a magazine, they sell magazines no matter what.
Well, the Kennedys are kind of made while you wait nobility. They're. I mean, I've known many American aristocrats. I wrote a book on the Mellons, for example, and I got to know that family quite well. What's interesting about the Kennedys is that they've never taken themselves seriously on sort of the tea drinking level, on the fortune building level. I mean, Joe Kennedy left a substantial fortune, which has pretty much run to seed since nobody in the family is interested in looking after it.
Smith used to do a little bit.
He did what was done in his generation, and
right.
He was no mastermind.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they're not such wealthy people today.
No, they really aren't.
Those trusts,
because their interest has never been money or what money could buy. Their interest has been power and politics, and I think you have to give it to them. They're sincerely concerned with the outcome of the country. Teddy is very idealistic in terms of what he can do for the people who are otherwise voiceless.
Bobby's relationship, this is going a little bit away from the book, with Johnson. What do you think?
Well, it went from bad to worse, you know. I mean, he didn't like Johnson, and he was shocked when his brother chose Johnson as vice president. Because Bobby had been sort of...
I remember that, the convention.
He didn't care for Johnson, and when Jack was convinced the only way he would win was with Johnson's help, Bobby fought that decision, and Johnson knew that, and got right back to Johnson. I remember talking with Doris Kearns Goodwin, whom you...
She's a great historian.
Yeah, I think she was with Lyndon Johnson the day that Bobby got killed.
Right.
She was in the ranch.
What did Lyndon say?
Well, let's just say he didn't cheer, but he wasn't devastated. You know, but Bobby was always a thorn under his saddle.
You know, I remember when Jack Kennedy was killed. I think everybody does. November 22nd. Everybody knows where they were. And that time I was in school. My first impulsive reaction, and believe me, it's only my impulsive reaction, was, my God, Johnson really wants to be president. That's just what happened to me. I'll never forget that.
Well, I think a lot of people felt that. I remember very clearly. It happened that I was skiing with the Kennedys. I'm a skier, and they do some skiing, and we have mutual friends. So I was in their party about 3 or 4 weeks before Bobby announced in 1968. And we were all sitting on top of a mountain eating sandwiches, I remember. And somebody asked Bobby, he said, are you still hot and heavy after Jimmy Hoffa? He said, why should I waste my time with Hoffa when I've got Lyndon to worry about?
Oh, my God.
You know, and I was being a reporter. I took out a notebook, and I started to take that down. Bobby turned around. He always had eyes in the back of his head. He said, what are you writing there, Burton? I said, I'm just taking a note. He said, don't you realize we're all on vacation? You can't do that. I said, look, you tend to your profession, I'll tend to mine. Now, with anybody else, it would have meant estrangement with a guy like that. With Bobby, it sealed our association.
Is that right?
Yeah. With the Kennedys, you have to stand up. You have to you have to let them know that you're there, too.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
You're right. With another person, you would have been wiped out.
Right.
I mean, he wouldn't feel comfortable with you. I mean, you were basically on vacation with them.
Yeah. But wow. He understood that he'd gone too far. And I think that was characteristic of him. He was a very humorous, decent man, Bobby Kennedy.
Where were you when he was shot, killed?
I was in New Hampshire.
Devastated, I'm sure.
Well, you know, it seemed such an aborted life. It seemed such a foreshortened career. I think Bobby was just, Bobby came out of the world of Roy Cohn and Joe McCarthy, and to have come that far suggested how much further he could still have gone.
Was he brilliant?
No. There's the streak of brilliance in the Kennedy family, could be identified with a surgical needle. It's not. None of these people are brilliant in the sense of being marvelous students, but all of them have wonderful political intuitions, and this is certainly true of Ted, and a kind of profound knowledge of how the society works, and a deep willingness to immerse themselves in it and pay the costs. And that's what's so remarkable about them.
What was Ted Kennedy's relationship to Jackie Kennedy?
Well, I think he was very supportive of Jackie. I know when
Did you meet Jackie?
I've met her. In fact, I got a letter from her about 2 or 3 months before she died in connection with another project.
Really?
She really turned into a magnificent
She was a good editor,
being.
by the way, wasn't she?
Good editor, yeah.
Doubleday, I think, right?
Yeah.
She was a great editor.
She turned from a kind of, the kind of mannequin that she was in the White House into a really formidable, warm human being in the course of those years. It's interesting to watch the development of these people. That's one thing about the Kennedys. They almost all have the capacity for unbelievable growth, and that's certainly what she showed.
Did Bobby have a unique relationship with Jackie Kennedy? People speak about that. That's why I ask you.
Well, I think he was solicitous of her and concerned about her. I don't think that there was much enthusiasm for the marriage to Onassis, which was pretty obviously a financial relationship. Remember when Onassis died, Ted had to go over to Greece and try to sort it out and protect Jackie's interests, which was not his. I mean, he's not a financial man, and it made for a tough ride, funeral ride. He apparently brought it up in the cortege, and it was not a comfortable situation for him. One thing about Teddy is he hems and haws a lot when he's forced to say or do something he's not comfortable doing. When he can speak his mind, he's very eloquent.
I've heard that. People have told me that about him.
Yeah.
And, he has this There's a mixed message about Ted Kennedy.
Yeah.
People have to read your book to really get a clear feeling of it.
That's absolutely the necessary.
It's really mixed. Some think he's a buffoon. Other ones think he's very he's skillful in what he does. He's certainly in the Senate now. He's run a lot of bills through there. He's been for, in a sense, for the poor people, for the welfare people. He's tried to help on that side of the pole more so than he is on the wealthy side. You know, his public policy positions are very much, so in a sense, socialistic democratic. You know.
Well, I mean, for some reason, much more than his brothers. He from the very beginning saw himself as a kind of tribune of the people. I mean, it's interesting to note, for example, that when Ted was in college, he spent some of his free time working in settlement houses around South Boston and so forth. Now, that's something, if you understand the college years of somebody like Jack Kennedy, been out of the question. He was on the Gold Coast at Harvard. He was a sort of a playboy. He didn't take anything too serious. He was bright enough, but nothing like that. Ted has always had a very strong, intuitive sense of social responsibility.
Who wrote Profile of Courage?
Well, let's just say that Ted Sorensen played a part. But I would imagine, if you've ever read the letters, there's a wonderful book out by a guy named Hamilton called it's on Jack Kennedy's youth, you know, on his wild youth. And there's some fabulous letters from Jack Kennedy to Lem Billings, who was a great friend of his.
That was his real friend. I mean, a buddy of his.
Yeah.
Sort of like Lindsay is to Bruce Lindsay is to Clinton. He's a guy who was always around.
That's right. I knew Lem, and who was an interesting guy in his own right. But if you read those letters, you realize that Jack Kennedy really had the capacity to be an outstanding writer. I mean, these are wild, crazy, often obscene letters. And that was part of Jack's personality. He was a down and under type of guy at times.
We've got about 30 seconds, Bert. Everybody should read your book because the Kennedys are very important to the population of this country, and anyway, they've been made so. And everybody should read what happened. What happened to Joan Kennedy, by the way? How's she doing?
I think she's struggling along. Joan is a fine person who's had great problems.
Did she talk to you about this book?
Not about this book. I've talked to her in the past in connection with my previous book, though I know her quite well. She's not close enough to the center of focus of this book for me to have troubled.
Last question, I'll let you go. How does Ted Kennedy feel with the Republicans controlling the Senate?
Well, he doesn't mind if the Republicans control the Senate, as long as he can control the Republicans.
Well said.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. Stay with us. We'll be back. We're back. We promised you we may change the Senate, so we have Mark Green here as the public advocate of the city of New York, who's going to run for the United States Senate on the Democratic line. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Leon.
I remember you starting this campaign a while ago. You were the first in the ring, weren't you?
Well, I started, I guess, in one sense in 1986. In January of that year, I was unknown, never elected, no public record. I'd been a public interest lawyer with Ralph Nader, and I announced for the U.S. Senate, showing more energy than judgment. And I started 50 points behind Al D'Amato in the first poll. And then I lost 57-41 after winning the nomination. Filed a Senate ethics complaint against Al D'Amato in 1989, saying that he had corruptly used his office. And in 1991, the Senate Ethics Committee unanimously reprimanded Al D'Amato for his ethics based on my complaint. And today, you know, most surveys I'm running ahead of him statewide. I am running this year, Leon, for re-election as public advocate, a job I love. I've been an advocate ever since 1970.
A lot of people don't know what the job is. Am I right, Mark? Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, they may not know because it's a new title to an old job. It's City Council President. It's the person a heartbeat away from the mayor, next in line. I preside over the City Council, introduce bills. Mostly, though, I'm the city's ombudsman, like a Ralph Nader, in a sense, with a portfolio, where I help the consumers of city services. If the pothole is too deep, the water bill is too high, the civilian complaint against the police officer isn't followed up, I can go to bat for people and get them the government they pay for.
People write to you and call you all the time?
Yeah.
And you got a big staff?
No. I don't know what your definition of big is. We get, I'll ask you. We get 15,000 letters and calls and walk-ins a year with people with complaints. And we have an investigative unit to look into, and as we did 3 weeks ago, we looked at and rated city hospitals. We looked at the child care deficit in the city. We studied how far more people lack health insurance than before and documented it with 45 staff for a 7.5 million person city.
It's not a lot.
No, it's not. We work very, very hard.
Do you have investigative people?
We have 10 people who investigate.
Do they have the power of arrest too?
No.
So, okay, you investigate. What happens? You find out that something's wrong. So somebody didn't do the right thing with me on the sidewalk. So I go to you and I say, Mark, I got a problem with the sidewalk. So you investigate. Then what happens?
Well, it's a very good question. If someone has a grievance and they're right, the sidewalk's been broken up and it's supposed to be repaired, the water bill is 5 times higher than it was and it should be. When my office contacts a middle-level bureaucrat or a civil servant at a city agency, that person may say to themselves, uh-oh, if I don't do right for the citizen, Mark Green may go to the press, may complain, may go to the mayor. All I want is a fair hearing so the citizen gets what they deserve. We get a tremendous amount done at the middle level of the bureaucracy. However, because the mayor and I are different parties and separately elected, and no mayor loves an ombudsman who watches him, sometimes when I propose something, I feel the mayor does the opposite just because I'm proposing it in a kind of partisan, spiteful way. That doesn't help the public.
You know what Rudy Giuliani said on this show about Mark Green?
I could guess, but I'll let you tell me.
Take a guess.
He's never met a finer advocate.
See, he's looking around at my desk all the time. See how it looks.
Well,
I guess that is about 1.5 years ago.
Well, you once told me that. Now, that betrayed insecurity and anxiety. In fact, I wasn't looking at his desk. I announced over 1 year ago I would not run for mayor.
No, I don't think you can say that today. That was 2 years, 1.5 years ago.
I'm running for re-election to stay in the public advocate now.
You think Rudy is a popular guy?
Fairly popular. I mean, frankly, it's a tribute to him that in a city nearly 5-1 Democratic, a Republican got elected, is popular enough to be ahead of the most likely Democrat who will be the nominee against him, Ruth Messenger.
Yeah.
It will be a much more competitive race than people think.
You think
now.
it'll be a tight race?
Sure. But, appreciate that Rudy Giuliani lost by 1.5 points, then he won by 1.5 points. And the public doesn't swing 20 points in their opinions of people. They kind of lock in based on belief, looks, ethnicity, whatever the mix is. My guess is people think it's a runaway race. It's not. Rudy Giuliani knows it's not. And it'll be a 5-6 point race.
I read something that you were in a rock and a hard place about endorsing a borough president candidate or something. Am I correct or incorrect?
Yes. I endorsed a colleague of mine in the city council. C. Virginia Fields is the councilwoman from Harlem. She's running for borough president in a 5-way race. One of the other opponents, one of the leading opponents, is Deborah Glick, an assemblywoman from the lower Manhattan. Now, C. Virginia Fields happens to be black. Deborah Glick happens to be a lesbian. And everybody knows this. I supported the woman who I thought was best to bring the borough together, a colleague who I admire, and I've worked well with. Some gay leaders said, how dare I support someone against a gay candidate? Hey, I think we should never vote for or against someone solely because of their inherited gender, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation. Now, in a city that's more than half minority, it is fair to try to have some diversity, borough-wide or citywide, and at the moment with David Dinkins' defeat, there is no black elected citywide or borough-wide. And so it was a consideration on my scale of judgment, but absolutely not the consideration.
All right, let's talk about anybody challenging you at the public advocates level.
Yes, Mayor Giuliani has selected a running mate to run against me.
The Jewish fellow? No.
Yes, he
Polonetsky?
You see the world through these ethnic. Yeah, Jules Polonetsky is a Brooklyn Assembly member who has been picked by Giuliani to run on the Republican and liberal lines, and I assume I'll oppose him in the fall election. And I may have a primary opponent if I can advertise my opponent.
Sure.
Roger Green, a friend of mine in the state assembly, a assembly member from Brooklyn, has said he wants to be on the ballot to run against me. He said not to win, but he wants to redefine the concept of winning. He's African American. He's upset that more aren't running this year, and may the best advocate win.
You love this stuff, huh?
You love your stuff. You know, if you don't like what you're doing on your side of the camera and all your books and all your lectures, you couldn't wake up in the morning. If I didn't like helping people, policy debating, advocating for working families, I couldn't do it.
I know, you really love it. You could be in business with your brother probably, doing okay, you know? I mean,
I have a private sector brother. He is a very expensive brother in public life, and we split up the universe.
But I noticed another thing. Your wife really compliments you. She really works with you at this.
PLE or PLI? How do you spell compliments? She doesn't compliment me like, hey, you look great today.
No, she's complimentary to the things that you're doing.
My wife is named Denny Frand. She is an activist. She's an organizer. And she has a brain and a judgment that if I'm a little unsure about reading someone or making a judgment about which way to go, first of all, she's totally blunt and honest with me. She has no axe to grind, and she's a genius at spotting the right thing to do.
And it's good that, you know, you work together, that she doesn't abhor politics, otherwise it'd be a rough game, wouldn't it?
More than rough. Someone said to me the other night, Jesus, every day you get beat up. I mean, a mayor really gets beat up. I mean, I'm even pretend to be that level. How can you endure all this? I was at the Legislative Correspondents' Assembly dinner in Albany where they make fun of politicians.
Yeah, right.
How can you endure that? I said, hey, I go home, I have the greatest wife in the world, I have 2 children, 18 and 13, who I worship. You know, maybe I'll get elected to the Senate or re-elected to public, and if I don't, I'm fine.
You were just in Israel. Bibi Netanyahu has a problem with wives. I don't know if you know this. His wife, I'll tell you about it. I don't want you to speak about it, you know. Anyway, his wife is, you know, Bibi had a problem with an affair, and they have a written agreement that she has to travel with him any place he goes. And she has to really, in a sense, watch his schedule. She has that ability.
I've heard of prenuptial arrangements. This is a postnuptial arrangement.
That's right.
Okay, it's a first.
And she's getting terrible press in Israel because she's really in situations that she shouldn't be, you know. And my reason for saying to you is that, yeah, I think Hillary Clinton is also very complimentary to Bill Clinton. I think your wife is the same. I noticed it at the convention when we were there. I mean, that's nice, and I only said it as a compliment to
Well, Hillary and Bill Clinton, some people love them. I'm a big fan of theirs. Some people don't. They are so brilliant,
right,
and they work so well together. I've seen them finish each other's sentences and thoughts. And he, of course, is intellectually superior. He absorbs information. And then he has, beyond that, her to be a funnel of information and insight and intellect. And I've never seen a couple like that in public life.
I think they're a great couple, and I think people criticize them. It's silly, and they're going to live happily thereafter, and there's not going to be many Jennifer Flowers coming around, and it really doesn't make sense. I also think the country is doing pretty well under Clinton, and the polls are up there, and all the stuff he's going through, I don't think it's going to affect him that much.
I think you're right. I picked up, though, I did visit Israel 3 months ago with my wife and 2 children on the occasion of my son's bar mitzvah, and did visit with Prime Minister Netanyahu in his office, as well as some other government leaders. His wife was not with him at that time.
But she checked out.
It was a meeting with me. I mean,
you're not that good looking.
What could go wrong?
And you're not a woman.
But it was an extraordinary trip. I mean, I remember thinking, as my son approached his bar mitzvah, well, should we have a party? There's a joke in New York City. There's more bar than mitzvah.
Right.
A lot of celebrations.
Good line.
And so we decided, should we have a party? Should we go to Israel so he understands he's a link in a 4,000-year-long chain? It's not just bar mitzvah and then leave. So we decided to do both.
Good.
Good, indulgent Jewish parents. And we had a party, and then we took a trip that and he will never forget.
Okay, let's assume that you win the public advocate. Do you make a promise that you're not going to leave, like Clinton said when he became governor, because you're going to run for the Senate, right? And you're being challenged in a primary now.
Right.
Who's challenging you? Chuck Schumer?
Oh, in a Senate primary.
Right, Senate.
So Chuck Schumer. No, I am bad at coy. For better or worse, most people, like me or not, they know what I stand for. I say what I think. I think I do what I say. And so you've got to be honest. I have 2 standards here: to be totally candid about what I'm doing, and then let the voters decide.
Right.
So I've said, I
Good
think
policy.
I've done well.
It's the only way, really.
Well, You mentioned Bill Clinton, Governor Pete Wilson.
Mario Cuomo
Didn't do it. Well, let me just, Pete Wilson in 1994 said, re-elect me governor. I promise I won't run for president. Right. 2 months later, he was running for president. So I have said, I love being public advocate. I've put it on the map. I think I've saved consumers their money and their health. If you think one good term deserves another, re-elect me. I'll stay 4 years. The sole exception being if the comparable electorate wants to promote me to the higher office of U.S. Senate because they think I can do more for them, who's hurt?
That's fair. That's full disclosure, and that's very fair.
The only person hurt might be my opponent. But, you know, the public's entitled to make their judgment.
No one can gripe that. I mean, I really think that's fair and it's honorable because a lot of people don't. I think Leonard Garment on a television show the other night saying, I'm not sure it was Garment, so it was someone, a historical person, said that, you know, Bush said, read my lips, so he broke his promise. That's what presidents are supposed to do. So Roosevelt said in 1933 didn't believe in socialism, whatever it was. So they broke their promise. That's the prerogative of president. I'm not sure the public accepts that today, and I think Bush really lost a lot of weight in that campaign because of read my lips.
Now this is interesting.
Mark, let me continue. We'll talk to Mark Green, who's the public advocate of the city of New York. If you have a complaint, call him. He'll take care of you, not personally, because 15,000 letters is a little hard, but his office will. We'll be right back. We're back talking to Mark Green, who is running, or is the public advocate, will run again for public advocate, and discloses to you that if the only reason he'll leave that office if he runs and he wins for the U.S. Senate. Very honorable. Okay,
we're talking about broken promises.
Right.
You know, a politician may say, like Bill Clinton, I want troops in Bosnia for just another year and a half. And he means it. He doesn't intend to break that pledge. And then it works out that the conflict is not easily managed, and they have to stay a little longer to try to keep peace in that country. And then he may have to violate his original goal, and it's not a betrayal, he has new information. This is different than when a politician says something they know is not true to pander for votes, and then when they switch later, it was anticipated. George Bush had to know that by saying no new taxes, when the deficit was exploding, and no new taxes means that the deficit would go into a situation where interest rates would skyrocket, the economy would tailspin. So when he broke his word, he knew it was going to happen. When Pete Wilson ran for president, he knew he was going to violate what he said earlier. Right. And that's the kind of deception the public holds against public officials, and they should.
Right. If you win the Senate race, who takes your place as public advocate?
You.
Anybody? Is there another election?
There is a special election in 1999 in that November. And it's interesting because should I win public advocate and run and win for Senate, then there'll be an election citywide. It's the only citywide election, obviously. Whomever is elected then becomes next in line. Now, should, hypothetically, Rudy Giuliani win re-election, this person then would be next in line to a term-limited mayor. And that's an enviable position for someone.
A lot of people be voting. A lot of people be running.
I would think so.
I do too. The rent business with Shelley Silver versus Pataki. Big win for Shelley?
Tremendous. You know, it's a funny thing that speakers in the Assembly are not well known statewide. They're monstrously powerful in Albany, but people as formidable as Stanley Fink or Mel Miller are literally unknown around the state. But when Shelley Silver took on and fundamentally beat George Pataki because Joe Bruno went so far over the cliff urging the abolition of rent regulation on which 2.5 million people depend, he now is a hero. He's far more well known. People now are talking about him running for governor, which would be surprising only in that he's co-governor already without having to run for it.
You know who's running? Peter Vallone.
Absolutely. I've spoken, my colleague Peter Vallone, the Speaker of the New York City Council from Astoria.
He's also a powerful guy.
In the City Council.
You can't do anything in the city without Peter Vallone.
He's very powerful.
Budget. He's the budget.
Everyone knows he's powerful. Only those who know him personally know what a sweet guy he is.
He's a wonderful guy.
He's a warm, talk about family man.
And he goes to Minion every day. He's Catholic, but he goes to his own Minion.
Every day he goes to church. Right. He's a religious and a family man. He'd bring great spiritual and values were he elected governor. But I think he does want to run, and we'll see who else may run for governor. It's an open field.
Mark, if you got to the Senate, today, or when is it, next year? When are you running against D'Amato?
It'll be next year.
The Republicans control the Senate. So in a way, you'd be sort of a backbencher. Although, you know...
Well, first of all, if I run and if I win,
right,
we're one seat closer to Democrats taking over the Senate.
That's true. How do you think the Republicans are doing up there?
Terrible. Whenever you let the Republicans take over, suddenly Social Security is threatened, Medicare is threatened, the environment is threatened. There's supposed to be disaster relief to places flooded out in the West, and they hold it up because of their ideological jihad. I mean, I see Gingrich bragging that we're the party of Lincoln. They're the party of the reverse Lincoln, with justice for some. It's basically a formulation of with malice toward all. And I am a believing Democrat, and I am pleased to see, however, that Al D'Amato is racing so fast to his left to overcome his conservative positions. He may primary me in 1998.
All you have to do is hire Dick Morris, and you do that.
Well, the Democrats do it in reverse.
That's right.
But D'Amato has done a 180-degree flip-flop on minimum wage, on the environment. He had a 0% voting record on the environment, Leon, in 1996. And now he makes like he's the Green candidate. I think what he's trying to do is run against his record, run away from his record, because he realizes there's a reason in a national poll he was 100th of 100 senators in popularity based on favorable rating in home state. It's tough to get lower than 100.
Is that right?
He was the least popular
so he won the
senator
misery
in
index.
America.
That's terrible. He won the misery.
Terrible for him. In other words, without...
But he does have a great issue with the Swiss bank affair business. You know, he's worked very hard on that.
Edgar Bronfman Sr. visited him and said, Swiss banks laundered Nazi money, stealing it from Jews. Will you help? He did. I don't know what New York senator wouldn't. Now, Al D'Amato is energetic, resourceful, resilient, and I give him all that. I absolutely don't underestimate his ability as a politician. I think, though, he's dug himself into such a deep hole. His mocking of Judge Ito, the way he went after Mrs. Clinton in this Whitewater witch hunt. He sings Old MacDonald on the Senate floor. Herbert Lehman and Pat Moynihan didn't do that. And as I move around the country, a lot of people regard him as a career politician with big money, buying big favors. And I think we need a new, clean Democratic tradition in that seat.
What's Bill Clinton's position on the Senate primary? Can he take a position? He has to stay neutral, doesn't he?
Yeah, he has to stay neutral. I've been a friend of Bill Clinton since he was governor in 1984. Now, you know, he's very happy that his friend who lost to D'Amato, who exposed D'Amato, is now running ahead of D'Amato statewide. But the White House and the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee, by custom, have to stay neutral, and then presumably will help ardently whomever the nominee is.
Mark, do you know Dick Morris?
Sure.
What does he do now? Does he...
Kibitzes.
That's it.
Well,
goes on television.
In this country, when you get that famous...
You become a celebrity.
Yeah. I wouldn't trade. I don't want to be that infamous. But the key to Dick Morris is he's brilliant. In other words, there's something going on up there, and he has big ideas. 4 out of 5 are cockamamie, but one is so big that presidents get reelected based on it. His book is interesting, his commentary is interesting, and there will be people who will hire him, the problems notwithstanding, because he gives interesting advice.
You're historical, you've read a lot of history. If you were to go to the Senate, who are the top 3 senators that you would like to emulate? Who are the 3 great senators in your opinion?
Well, Paul Douglas of Illinois and Phil Hart of Michigan were people who were progressive, practical, and totally honorable. Also, my favorite of all time, who was in my lifetime, was Bob Kennedy. He was independently wealthy enough and tough enough from coming out of his family that he could say what he believed in and not give much of a damn if somebody nibbled at him. A lot of politicians today just follow the polls and follow the money. And Bob Kennedy, like Ted Kennedy today, like the author of the Bert Hersh's book,
right,
he is so big, I mean large in a historic sense. They have the courage to say what they think, and too many politicians just follow the political conventions.
What do you think about all this militancy in religions today. I mean, you see a lot of divisions, even amongst Jews, between the Orthodox and the conservative Reform. How do you bridge that? Let's say you're the senator for all the people, you know? It's tough.
Okay, here, a senator cannot bridge religious divisions. It's hard for a senator to do much within his or her domain. Religion is beyond politics, and there's supposed to be, for different reasons, a wall of separation in the First Amendment between religion and politics. I was not happy, as I left Israel, to read that Orthodox Jews in Israel said that I was not a Jew.
Is that right?
In that I belonged to a Reform congregation, and they were saying that if you're bar mitzvahed at a Reform congregation or married at a Reform congregation, it is illegitimate.
They explicitly use your name?
No, I'm sorry. Not me personally.
Just you as a member of the Reform congregation.
Correct. I'm sure it would shock Central Synagogue, where I am a congregant. And Jews have been hurt and discriminated against for so long, from Haman to Hadrian to Hitler. We better hang together.
Thanks for coming on. We wish you the best of luck.
I appreciate the opportunity to be continued.
Don't forget, if you have any complaints about New York City, write to Mark Green. He'll take care of you. We'll see you next week.